Today, I finally decided to make a follow-up to my first video, and I'm here to talk about the biggest shortcomings of my college admissions profile. Basically, I applied to a handful of the most selective schools, and I got waitlisted by pretty much all of them, like Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and Columbia. So I wanted to share some of the reasons why I felt like my application was on the fence for these colleges. And they're all centered around the fact that I couldn't find a way to stand out among the 50,000 or so applicants they got. And the main reason I had trouble doing that is because for a really long time, I thought that you had to be good at everything to get into these schools, and then when I realized that this wasn't the case at all, it was way too late for me to do anything about it. So the first potential reason why I got waitlisted by so many schools is probably just because I wasn't talented enough. So you know how the saying goes, if you're a jack of all trades, then you're a master of none. So basically, I feel like because I spread myself so thin for so long, I didn't get to invest enough time into excelling at anything. And I'm definitely not saying that I would have been on like Team Canada or Team USA for something, but if I had to restart high school, I probably would have picked something I thought was really interesting and invested all my effort into it. And I probably could have wowed more admissions officers as a result of that. But one thing that still holds me back to this day is that I've always cared way too much about my grades. So even though nobody besides me cares if I get a 98 or a 92, I still care too much for no reason. So maybe if I tried to get myself out of that mindset earlier, I probably could have done even better in things that I cared much more about, which were my extracurriculars. On the other hand, of course, plenty of people also get into these schools if they're not prodigies or geniuses, but I think a lot of them get in because they're able to demonstrate their passion for something. But because I was so focused on trying to be good at everything for a long time, my application ended up being all over the place, and it seemed like I wasn't particularly passionate about anything. So even though I spent a lot of time making sure my essays and activities showed how much I cared about helping others, I always knew that I should have invested more time into things I did for my community. And if I focused on fewer things, then I probably could have achieved more prior to application season. For example, I was so passionate about Team Math Attack, the competition I founded, and I invested so much effort over like 3-ish years to make it the best event possible. But the year after I graduated, the other founders took even greater efforts to expand the competition to 5 cities in Canada, which is something I always wanted to do, but I never could. And that's probably something that helped them get into Harvard and Princeton, while for me, I got waitlisted instead. Also, besides Team Math Attack, I still ended up doing activities that pretty much every Asian student did. And I know for a fact that there were plenty of more passionate and talented people who did debate, competed in Olympiads, performed at senior homes, you name it. So there was nothing interesting enough about me to get accepted over these candidates instead of waitlisted. Of course, if I were to just sit here and say that I should have redone high school entirely, it doesn't really help anyone who's wrapping up their college applications right now. So even though I was really proud of most of the essays I submitted, I definitely could have invested much more time into making them much more memorable, because I wasted a lot of time during college application season. So one story worth sharing is that since I was so hell-bent on not having any weaknesses for my applications, I wanted to redo my SAT because I wasn't happy enough with my essay score. For context, when I did the SAT at the end of junior year, I got an 800 in math, a 750 in English, and a 21 on my essay. But my best friend, who I'd say had comparable writing skills to mine, got a 23 and a much better reading writing score than I did, so I knew I could do much better. And at the same time, I knew for sure that my score would be viewed no differently than like a near perfect score, but I let my pride get the best of me, and then I ended up investing much more time into SAT prep than I probably should have. And then when I redid the SAT a few months later, I got a slightly better English score and a worse essay score, so all that extra prep was most definitely not worth my time. Beyond this, I also applied to too many things. For example, I applied to all the biggest Canadian scholarships because there was a chance I would stay in Canada for college, and I told myself I was doing this in case I got rejected by all the good schools in the US, but in reality, it's just because I wanted to try winning everything I had a chance at, and since I ended up getting into all my American target schools, I wasn't able to use my scholarships anyway, so this also became a huge waste of time. So what did all of this really mean in regards to my applications? While I was really proud of my essays in the end, I definitely still could have invested much more time in them. Because as standalone essays, I'd say most of them were pretty good, because if they weren't, then I probably would have gotten rejected rather than waitlisted by these colleges. However, given that by the start of senior year, I also knew that my stats, awards, and activities in isolation weren't good enough for a great shot at getting accepted, my essays definitely could have provided another way to stand out. And in retrospect, I probably should have made them more funny, more touching. Not really sure, but I definitely wanted to make them much more memorable. And the last thing worth mentioning is that I might have just gotten really unlucky, right? Because being waitlisted by 4 schools with lower than 5% acceptance rates, it's honestly pretty impressive. And even though I wrote each of them like letters of continued interest to provide some more updates about myself, I just never happened to get off any of these waitlists. But who knows, had I gotten like different admissions officers, or had slightly more people decline their offers, or had I just been luckier in any other way, maybe I could have gone into one of these schools. So I think that's enough sad content for today. I'll finish this video on a positive note. As you saw in my previous video, I still have plenty of great opportunities that I was really grateful for, and as you'll see in my future videos, I've gotten really lucky in my early career. So after I decided to go to CMU and then become a software engineer, I've had pretty much every opportunity I could have ever asked for, so I'm glad that things still turned out really well for me in the end. But yeah, I just wanted to make this video so that people don't make the same mistakes I made. But regardless of how your college decisions turn out, everything will be fine because there's still plenty of life ahead of you. See you next time.